Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Monday night edition of the People Show on intellectualradio.com, iHeartRadio, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. I'm Mark Wallace, your host and facilitator for this weekly program brought to you here on intellectualradio.com. We've got a lot that we have to get to, and certainly there is uh, news that is unfolding, but we're going to be talking about some things that are directly um, impacting us. Those of you who have seen the promos know that we're going to talk about what our role should be. I gave you a little bit of a teaser about that. So we're going to talk about that a little bit later on. But what I certainly want to talk about, uh, and of course, we're going to have a guest who's going to be filling in again for Monroe this evening. And you saw him last week that he was on the program with me, and we had a great conversation, I believe, and I think that you all enjoyed it based on some of the comments that we received. And William Griggs is going to be joining us again this evening, and he will be filling in for Monroe, and Monroe will be returning with us in a couple of weeks to his rightful place. A lot of things going on in the news, and we're going to talk about those things. Certainly want to make sure that we provide you with as much clarity as possible. And so we're going to be talking about that. And I'm going to be bringing into the program in just a couple of minutes. Um, there are several things that are going on. The government shutdown is still, it's in its 13th day. And the Republicans, or Mike Johnson, is still trying to blame the Democratic Party for shutting the government down when in fact they control the House, the Senate, and the um, executive board. So they have all of the power to reopen the government. The Democrats are standing strong and firm, as they should, because healthcare is at a critical crisis for more than 20 million Americans that will have to face a choice of paying 75% more in their monthly premiums or going without health care. And the Republicans want to take those subsidies and use those subsidies to give another unneeded tax cut to the wealthiest 1% who controls more than 92% of the wealth, more than 92% of the bottom uh, of households in America. One person has more wealth than 52% of the bottom households in America. And they want to give those folks an additional tax cut, but taking it from poor and working class people. It is poor people and working class people that fund more than 56% of the government. So you should know that most of us are the ones who are paying the lion's share of taxes that are funding the government. All right, we're going to be talking about that. We're also going to be talking about this peace accord, or this peace deal that has been signed by um, most of the developed nations, and the um, ceasefire that is happening in Israel and Gaza, and what that means, and if it will hold. Right now, I'm going to bring on my guest, Bill Griggs, who was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and adopted Chicago as his home. upon earning his Bachelor's of Science degree from Northwestern University. He's worked in a number of areas, corporate America, to textbook publishing, to child welfare. He has lectured extensively throughout Chicago in areas of Black politics, spirituality, and Black history. He's the author of an Afrocentric metaphysical science fiction novel, The Megalite Connection. He is also an artist whose group will be presenting Chicago's first fine arts fair in 20 years at the end of October. He is also a frequent guest on a good friend of mine's radio program on another station, Salim Muwakil, and I've of course seen him there. Let's welcome him to the program. Will Griggs, welcome to the program. How are you? Bill, how you doing?
Hi, I'm having some technical difficulties here. I have two versions of the program running at once.
Okay,
So,
well, I've only got one of them, so hopefully you don't have the feedback. There. Okay. All right. We're gonna let Will get situated, and then we'll bring them back in as soon as they are ready. Uh, so again, this took place today, and certainly, if it holds, we certainly have to give the administration credit for getting Benjamin Netanyahu and Hamas to come to a ceasefire agreement, and then getting the rest of the developed nations to sign on a peace agreement. Now, they signed the peace agreement, but understanding and signing the peace agreement does not mean that it is in full effect. There's a 20-point plan, right? 20-point plan to these peace agreements, and we know that as history has demonstrated to us before, that peace agreements have been signed, have been agreed upon, but those peace agreements holding have been a challenging effort. So it is certainly our hope that that will hold. The hostages or the remaining hostages were released. I believe there's some unfortunate couple dozen hostages that are deceased that have to be returned or may not even be returned to their family members, and hopefully that will take place. Um, but it wasn't all a bed of roses when the president went over. There was a couple of people in the Israeli legislature that were not happy and made some comments during President Trump's address to the Israeli assembly, and they were removed from the room. And of course, President Trump lauded that as being an efficient execution by the security there in Israel. Certainly, again, we give credit where credit is due, that he was able to get this to this point. There was also work that was done in the previous administration and previous administrations as well, have tried to bring a peaceful agreement between the Palestinians and Israel. I think that it is a travesty as to what has taken place here. I think Bill is back, so I'm going to bring him into the studio now. Bill? All right, we got you back.
I'm coming. I'm trying.
All right,
Can you
we
hear
got
me?
you. You're here. Yeah, I can hear you very clearly.
I
You're
don't have
good.
any audio right now.
All right, can't hear me?
Okay, I'm working on getting there visually. Okay,
Okay.
but I still have two programs running, so I'm working on it even as we speak. I tried to pull up last week and this week, and this is what
All right. Well, last week you only that's just for you to view at your leisure.
you log on to.
All right.
Yeah.
Try to close out last week's
So
and just
back to the
stay
week.
in with this week.
Yeah.
All right. They're having some technical issues there. Um, and I want to have this conversation so about what I told you about with Bill. So I'm going to hold off on having that conversation. But I do want to talk about just briefly what is going on in Israel and say that I am glad that the the bullets have uh, stopped firing, bombs have stopped going off, and the murder of thousands of Palestinian children, men and women have ceased there. I think that this is something that is tragic and certainly should never have gotten to this level. I think that Benjamin Netanyahu is a war criminal himself, and I think that he used this attack that initially came on October the 7th um, from the uh, Hamas rebels to launch this war and these missiles on uh, the Palestinian people under the guise of protecting and securing Israel. Um, and I don't think that there is anybody, I don't think there's anybody who agrees that the thousands upon thousands of lives that have been taken by um, Benjamin Netanyahu and those forces should have gone to this length. I think that um, that uh, the Biden administration, I think that the Biden-Harris administration should have taken a much more firmer position earlier on to stop Benjamin Netanyahu in um, this attack that he actually wanted, um, that he wanted, and under his thoughts that he is going to um, totally eliminate Hamas. I think that it is an unrealistic um, thought, an idea, but I think that that is what he's holding to do that. All right, we're going to try to bring Bill back into the studio. Bill, are you there? Bill, I think your screen is frozen, and if you're speaking, I can't hear you. He's having some he's having some technical difficulties getting in. Um, let's see. Hopefully, they can find their way back in. Um, so, at any rate, uh, with that, we'll see how that shakes out. We'll see what happens in the weeks and months to come. Let's hope. Let's hope that um, that they're able to sustain and it is able to hold. That they can bring some sense of peace in the region where bombs can stop, and certainly that they don't have to be any further. We certainly don't want to have our men and women in these wars. Um, and so that is certainly what my hope and my prayer is that it holds, regardless of who gets the credit. Um, there is also the idea of the government. Okay, all right, we're going to try this one more
I
time.
think
Let's
I'm
see if we
in.
can bring him in. All right, here we go. We welcome Bill Griggs.
Sorry about
All right,
that.
okay, all right, okay. All right. Okay, Bill. So I was talking about, and I just want to briefly talk about that, get your thoughts on the uh, certainly on the peace agreement and the ceasefire that has taken place over in Israel and in Palestine, that the bombs and the killings has stopped over there, long overdue, and certainly they've been exacerbated, in my opinion, by Benjamin Netanyahu.
Oh,
What's your
absolutely.
thoughts?
I don't trust it. I don't trust it for 1 second because there's no good faith. One side is genocidal and homicidal, and their goal is to wipe out the Palestinian people. So, and the fact that it's been brokered by Trump, which means as long as there is something in it for him, he'll try to maintain it because he doesn't do anything unless it's transactional. That's who he is, and that's how he functions. So, I mean, it would be good, and maybe I'm being cynical, but I don't have a lot of confidence in this agreement. I don't know how it's going to play out. And like I say, I could be being cynical. It's possible that it really is going to work out fine. Just the very idea that Trump could do something right is beyond my comprehension, to be perfectly honest. So I think we'll have to see. I think there's probably some kind of deviant kind of thing behind it. I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to go too far off the conspiratorial lane, but I have my doubts. I really do. I have serious doubts as to the efficacy of this. How do you feel about it? Hello? Oh, great. Are we frozen? I got in but lost him. I don't know if anyone can hear me. I don't know if we are recording or not. I'm going to speak as if we are, even though we may not be. Um, but somebody has to fill in. And I'd rather do this and not be effective while the show is going on than to have it sitting here dead and not doing or saying anything. So until we can both get back on here at the same time, I'm going to assume that I'm actually doing the program. So we have talked about the ceasefire and whether or not, it's something that's desirable, that will actually work. And I have already, voiced my suspicions about that. While we're at it, though, and hoping desperately that Mr. Wallace will get back here, believe me, while we're at it, I guess the thing I would talk about next would be Barry Weiss, who is the new head of CBS News. This is another bout which really, really concerns me because we're talking about right now taking over the whole flow of information. You're already cut out history. You're getting rid of all Black history. So this is a total takeover of the whole flow of information. They've sued all the major networks You have Bezos taking over a major newspaper, and even though they've never really been objective, they had at least had that as an aspiration or um, a stated goal that they were objective. And so there was some effort to at least adhere to that concept. And as of right now, that has been rendered non-existent. This woman has no journalistic background whatsoever, yet she's running the journalism department at CBS, which is considered the Tiffany network in terms of the land of Cronkite and Rather and all those journalistic giants. And she's ultra wing. She is a ultra wing Jewish lesbian. So pull all that together, and it's more a takeover of exactly what's going on there, and it's very, very, very troubling that this is happening now. I wish I could find Mark Wallace. I don't know where he's gone, but I know I'd like to get him back here. So just a little bit about it. The owners of the CBS News now, I guess of CBS Network right now, are Larry Ellison and his son David Ellison, and they are filthy rich and very, very right wing and aligned with Trump. So what we're having now is a coalition of the oligarchs, the wealthiest. You figure if you had the funds of Elon Musk and some of the other people. Are you back, Mark?
I am back. We're having some internet connection issues in the area.
You
We,
look
AT&T
good,
is
man.
working.
I'm glad you're back.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for
I
carrying on.
did the best I can to carry
All right.
it.
Yeah, certainly appreciate that. All right. Certainly we want to apologize to you. All right. We're back on intellectualradio.com and iHeartRadio. I want to apologize to the audience. I want to thank all of you for joining us via YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. And you're here listening to this week's edition of the People Show with Mark Wallace and, of course, William Griggs, who is my guest this week. He was with us last week, and I'm looking forward to having him to come back on a semi-regular basis to talk about these issues. Bill, we were talking about what has happened over in on Israel and whether or not,
Hmm.
I think both of us have some trepidations about the sincerity
Absolutely.
of this. But I also find it very, very, I think it's very blatant to me, but I find it odd that there has not been much reporting on the fact that all of a sudden he has bought his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, who is not in the government, to serve a significant role in so-called brokering or facilitating this agreement. Now, and I also find it odd that the media is not reporting this because if we remember, Jared Kushner got $2 billion from the
That's right.
region, part of which came from Qatar uh,
Hmm.
after the first administration. And
That's
they
right.
are involved in all kinds of deals
Hmm.
that are probably worth upwards of $6 trillion.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
so I find that to be very odd and how fluid this is all moving with Jared Kushner's involvement.
Well, you know what it is in my humble estimation is you look at the gangster genre, okay? Petty criminals, they shoot people in the alleys or what have you. The big time mafioso, they shoot them in broad daylight in front of everybody and dare you to do something about it. And that's kind of how Trump is functioning. It's like we don't have to hide our corruption. Not a matter of fact, not only do we not have to hide it, we can implement it as policy. And their base, the MAGA, those people are Some of them, interestingly enough, there's a young Caucasian boy who does discussions. He's liberal now. He used to be like them, but he does discussions with the MAGA crowd, and they hang on to their position no matter what. But he actually had one woman who said that if she knew that Trump was a racist, she would change her position, which is interesting because the point I was going to make is that his backup, Trump's backup, has no more morals than he has. The MAGA have no more. It's not like you could tell them what he's doing and it would change their minds. They did a brief experiment with AI voices and AI Trump talking about raping and pillaging and all that sort of thing. And then they turned and asked the MAGA crowd what they thought. And they had an excuse for it. I mean, he embraced the worst kind of criminal activity you could imagine. And they totally embraced it. They excused it. They said, you have to understand that, in terms of the raping children, a man has to be a man and he has needs, but that doesn't stop him from being a great leader. So, we have that to contend with, as well as the fact that, the media has never, and I'm not the first one to say this, but they've never shown a Palestinian perspective on what's going on there. So everything is skewed, and I think we're right to be very, very, very cautious in terms of. I don't believe anything Trump says, basically. So people say, well, whether he's failing or succeeding, how can you tell? Because it's based on what is his objective. If he's supposed to be a decent president, he's beyond failing. But given what his objective appears to be, which is to ruin the country and then take over what's left, to me, it looks like he's being quite successful. So.
Right. And it depends on whose agenda that he is serving. And it appears that there is an economic agenda that he has spoken to quite glaringly in his comments, who talked about uh, money in terms of this agreement coming together and talking about how rich the nations were that they were dealing with and how much money the nations have and will gain. So this appears to be openly with the lights on as
Mm-hmm.
I say transactional, that
Exactly.
it proves that these nations are agreeing to this because of an economic treaty that they are entering into with Trump, not necessarily the United States or not necessarily for um, global peace or um, for
Altruism.
humanitarian peace,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, but we hope that there is. I know that we probably sound cynical, but it seems to me that this, and following the way that this came together, in particular of the insertion of Jared Kushner, who has not been involved in this administration at all. But all of a sudden, 1 week ago, he has inserted into this process. And last Friday was this big announcement that there was a framework of a ceasefire.
What we have now is a serious indictment of the Ivy League schools. I mean, there's this assumption that if you go to Harvard, Yale, Princeton, that you must be quite brilliant. That's what people think. But I think Jared went to Harvard, if I'm not mistaken. And that boy is an idiot. Okay. That boy is a straight up idiot, as are most of the people surrounding Trump. So the fact that he could even barter on an up and up level a realistic deal in a complicated situation like this is beyond my imagination. It just is. Jared's an idiot. I mean,
Yeah,
he has about the
it's
same IQ as Donald Trump.
yeah, it's by far probably the most incompetent cabinet that certainly has existed in our lifetime and probably in the history of the presidency.
Intentionally so.
Um, that the people who are actually in charge of
Kash
our
Patel
government.
has no background in law enforcement, and he's over the FBI. Linda McMahon knows absolutely nothing about education and had never heard of the Tulsa massacres, and she's over education. Okay, who's you name them, and they're incompetent. None of them have any background, but just like they're getting rid of Project 25 said, we're going to get rid of anybody who doesn't project fealty to Trump, because that's what they're there for. That's what they're there for, is to praise Trump, because we don't really care about whether or not the government runs or whether or not it succeeds. And if anything, we want it to fail so we can redo it. And the incompetence, gross incompetence of these people. The closest I've seen was George W. Bush had a very incompetent staff. People forget that the reason why FEMA was in the news so much was because you had an Arabian horse trainer over FEMA. So when the Katrina hit, they didn't know what to do. So and Bush pretended like he hadn't heard about it until it was in process for a whole week and a whole bunch of people had died. So you had that, but this is that on steroids, on steroids, on steroids squared. At least the objective was not to tear everything up with the Bush administration like it is with this one. I can't believe that this man is president. I have problems. He's been president before, he's president now, and I still cannot process the fact that this kind of man with absolutely no moral fiber whatsoever, total criminal, a rapist, a racist, a narcissist, childish, evil, sociopathic person has been voted in as president, and so much of it is an example of the sickness in this country, because all the people now, like the farmers who are saying, well, we wish we hadn't voted him in because, he's ruining our farms. They don't care about anything else. If he wasn't ruining their farms, they'd be okay with all the meanness that he has put on everyone else, all the racism, all that. They're okay with all that. So they haven't repudiated the basic illness that has catapulted Trump into this position. So what we're seeing is stuff laid bare at a level that really it's been there before, but just for peace of mind, you can't go around thinking about how many people just have an irrational, powerful hatred for you to whom you have done nothing. And they've adopted this victimhood. It's like, I punch you in the jaw, and then I'm mad because you hurt my hand with your jaw. It's that kind of mentality that is pervasive. And it's all about me. It's about hypocrisy. It's about people in red states. When someone in another state has a natural disaster and needs funds, they vote against the federal government stepping in to help them until it's their state. Then they want the whole country to jump in to help them. You can't have a country based on that. So I have been maintaining for quite a while that we need to separate. MAGA needs their own country, because as long as we share a country with people who hate us, we will never be able to relax. And even if we did separate out, I don't want these idiots' decisions impacting me. I don't want somebody who is mad at Obama for not being in the Oval Office during 9/11, having a vote on something that affects me. But that's what we are contending with, and we will have to. And this thing that we have about wanting to be comfortable One of them, Nick Cannon, years ago, when I was writing my blog, said something about how they don't want us to be comfortable. And I was like, no, young man, they are not the ones who don't want you to be comfortable. I am the one who does not want you to be comfortable. We love comfort so much that we refuse to understand the war that we are in and currently losing. So that's kind of the
Well,
state, whatever.
uh, yeah, you helped me to segue into a conversation
Mm-hmm.
that I teased on the promo because I don't want for people to take it out of context.
Mm-hmm.
And because I have been contacted by members and people from Indivisible about this No King's Day rally that they're having. I've been contacted by people who is a part of 10 by 10 to Win, which is the independent um, black voting bloc that we are. It is necessary for us to establish more critical now than ever before. If
Mm-hmm.
we don't, um, and people are asking, should we be involved in
I know where you're
the
going.
demonstrations and these protests? They're asking me this. Now, I want to be very, very clear about what it is that I am about to say, is that
Mm-hmm.
um, I am not suggesting that we sit on and disengage or sit on the sideline. No, we
Mm-hmm.
have to be engaged, but we have to be engaged in a very different way.
Mm-hmm.
But in
Mm-hmm.
terms of participating in these demonstrations, in these protests, because they are now feeling the pain of
Mm-hmm.
what they voted for,
Mm-hmm.
Black people, as the largest single demographic voting bloc in this country, did what it's supposed to do on November the 5th of 2024. 78% of black men, 92% of black women
Mm-hmm.
voted against Donald Trump and what we see happening today. We did what we were supposed to do. 53% of white women, 54% of Hispanic men, and 82% of white men decided that this was better than
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Having a black
Kamala
woman.
Harris and
Right.
having the black woman or having a woman.
Mm-hmm.
They decided that it was certainly better than having a woman and certainly better than having a black woman in charge of the government. So they voted for this. So I am saying to, because I'm not speaking double tongue, I'm saying to our community that they are now trying to have this purple movement where they're mixing red and blue
Mm-hmm.
because they voted for something that is coming to haunt them.
Mm-hmm.
We have overcome all kinds of tragedies for hundreds of years. We've been able to overcome it, and we'll overcome this. This is not ours to fix.
Mm-hmm.
This is not ours to fix. What it what is ours to fix is to organize ourselves together in a posture that we have never organized ourselves before, so that we can definitively make demands locally and in our states to address the concerns of our communities and be able to impact national politics. That's where our focus needs to be. I don't want for us to um, have this misconception that somehow we've got to go to the streets and demonstrate. No, we don't have to go to the streets and demonstrate. We did what we were supposed to do. By and large, we did what we were supposed to do on November the 5th. They decided that this is what we should be doing. So, no, I don't believe that we should be marching with Indivisible. or any of those other groups against what is happening. They should have done that on November the 5th of
Mm-hmm.
2024,
Mm-hmm.
instead of them saying that or completely turning a blind eye to what someone has already told them that they were going to do.
Right.
That they thought that it was only going to go against black people and anybody who was not white. Well, that kind
Okay.
of
Well,
irresponsible and ignorance is not something that we have to fix. They need to fix this. And we don't need to be in the streets marching for this so that they can use an excuse to
mm-hmm.
shoot our people down. Because they're not going to shoot
Mm-hmm.
their people down. But if our people were to get out and be on the front lines, as we have been in the
Mm-hmm.
past, they will use the military to shoot our people down, and they will call it riots as opposed to it being public demonstrations.
Well, they broke up a Black Lives Matter rally, a peaceful one, during his first administration, so he could go carry a Bible upside down. And what you're saying has a large following now in the community. There's a lot of agreement with what you're saying, and it does make sense. Basically, we cannot keep trying to rescue white folk from white folk. I mean, if you all just insist on jumping off the cliff, so be it. But don't carry us with you. And so my concern is how to, I agree with the concept, but my concern is how do we fight them off when they're taking our history books out of the schools? I think we need more discussion among thoughtful people in terms of providing a new dynamic, a new motif, a new strategy, because you're right. I mean, we can't keep doing this. We fight for civil rights, and then white women take advantage of it more than we do, and then vote for Trump. So that's just one example of how we're being used. And you saw Muslims, especially like in Michigan, who endorsed Trump or who did not vote at all, even though he tried to impose a Muslim ban. You had police, the KKK, also known as the FOP, endorsing him, even though he endorsed that riot where they beat and killed police officers, and he's a 34 count felon. You had all these groups. Trump visited a non-union job on the same day that Biden was at a union, walked on a union picket line, and they
Hmm.
still voted for him. And we're supposed to sacrifice ourselves. The farmers, they wanted to get rid of all the quote illegal aliens, knowing that they were the ones that were working in their fields and made it possible for them to make a living. But that narrow-minded hatred, that ultimate disconnection is so profound that they continue not only to vote against their own best interests, but to vote against them in ways that are becoming increasingly powerful. And we're supposed to jump in front of them and help? I don't think so. But we do need to recognize that we are already the target of these people. They got rid of the librarian at the Library of Congress for being black, for crying out loud. What kind of harm did the librarian do to you? You know what I'm saying? So we are in it already, but what role do we want to play? I think we need a lot of conversation about. No, I'm gonna be honest, and I hear everything you're saying. Believe me, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying we need a coming together of the best minds we can pull together in terms of this strategy. And as far as running into it, I remember people don't know. All they know about I hope I'm not rambling, but all people know about Dr. King was the "I Have a Dream" speech. But what they don't know is his transition from when he began naively thinking that white ministers, his brothers in Christ, would work with him as opposed to being against him, and that that there was a conscience in America. And by the end of his life, he was saying things like, "I don't know if we should integrate. That's more or less like running into a burning building." So we need to reimagine things, and we need to quit focusing so much on being comfortable.
Well, without question, I think that you and I are not in disagreement,
No, we're not. No, we're
and
not.
which is why I'm saying to our audience that while this is not for us to be on the front lines,
Right.
it is not for us to be disengaged.
Right.
We will be there to be supportive, but in a very different role of correcting this because we did our job in
Hmm.
last year. It is not for us to be out in the streets. But we will be there to be supportive and engaged. What I am saying is that we should not allow for our frustrations to get in the way of our
Hmm.
future. There are people, black people, understandably frustrated with the Democratic Party.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
However, that may be the case, but there is not an alternative for us. The Republicans
Right.
are not an alternative. The Republicans have never delivered
Mm-mm.
anything that we can substantively say as a policy that to advance the conditions of black life from education to economics. Never happened. So what we must do is the same thing. I use the analogy of your vehicle, that if your car that you have breaks down on you, you don't throw your car away. You take your car to the mechanic and have the mechanic to work on the parts that causes for the car not to run and fix the parts that need to be fixed so that the entire car runs better. What I am saying that we as a body of people, because we have some responsibility and some role in some
Hmm.
parts of why the Democratic Party is fractured as it is, because we
Hmm.
have sat back and allowed for them
Hmm.
to do things unchallenged and
Hmm.
unchecked. So what we must do is organize ourselves together so that we can be the determiners of who the people are going to be within the Democratic makeup
Hmm.
that will be setting policy as we demand. So once they understand that, once we do that and they understand that we have organized in a way that we have never organized before,
Hmm.
then we have the power to make the demands and have those demands met.
Oh, absolutely. I
But
think, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, no,
Well, I think we have some ideas that float around in the community that are really kind of detrimental that we don't even examine, you know, like talking about the Democratic Party. Okay. Basically, I keep saying this, we're still in the Civil War. The only thing that's happened, what has happened is that the Democrats and Republicans flipped the switch. And the Republicans who were the enlightened party became the unenlightened party in the 60s when Barry Goldwater went against civil rights while Lyndon Johnson was pushing them. So all the Dixiecrats and racist Democrats went over to the Republican Party. And so the Republican Party is basically the party of white folks, and the Democratic Party is the party of everybody else. But even though that's how they're set up, that doesn't mean they're still Americans, and this is still a racist country. So we can't just say because
mhm,
you're a Democrat, you cool. One of the worst
mhm,
racists I heard in in recent memory was Geraldine Ferraro, Democratic candidate for vice presidency. I mean, she lost her mind when Obama was running for office. But we understand that we take that into account and we deal with it on another level of sophistication. And see, right now, what's happening is that we need to get hip to the game. We need to get hip to the game, and that means we need to reacquire, for one thing, curiosity. I think too many people don't have any. I mean, I think obviously they have it if they wouldn't be plugging in here and some other places. But a lot of us we just want to party. I mean, a lot of us, not all of us, obviously, and so we need to understand what this country really is and what it's about. And the thing that Trump is doing for us is illuminating all the hatred and backwardness and ignorance that this country represents. And it makes it easier for people like us to demythologize the country, where, George Washington was a great man, who took teeth out of people's mouths and put it in his own. And he wasn't waiting on them to die to do that. But that's the kind of slave owner he was. Or celebrating Christopher Columbus, who was just a horrible creature, demonic creature. He wrote in his diary when he met the Indians, oh, they are such a lovely, warm, gentle, and generous people. It should be really easy to subjugate them. We can go on. And that history, that lineage, that tradition has never stopped. And what happens? Columbus acts like that. Here we go again. Columbus acts like that, and we have a holiday for him. Andrew Jackson puts smallpox on blankets for the Indians, and we put him on a $20 bill. We still, the South never really lost the war because the North was never really against slavery. It wasn't. We always want equilibrium, or one is against and one is for, but that wasn't what the war was about. The South was dedicated to white supremacy and keeping slavery. They said it themselves. The North was dedicated to keeping the Union as one, whether it was slavery or non-slavery. So therefore, the fact that you had two separate agendas going on means that the one agenda could still survive once it got reunited. So slaveholders got reparations. We ain't get none. I mean, really.
Well, I want for us to, in a very intellectual way, understand what racism is. There is no such thing as a black racist.
Absolutely.
We could be bigoted, we could be prejudiced, but there is no such thing as a black racist. We do not have the power and the privilege and the prejudice to do to a group of people like what white folks currently and have always had to do to black folks. We don't have that power. I read an article today in the New York Times that talked about how black unemployment is surging. Black unemployment in the last 4 months have gone from 6% to 7.5%. While white unemployment ticked down to 3.7%. Now, who controls all of the systems? The federal government is in the hands of white racists. Republicans control the executive. They control the House. They control the Senate. Right?
And
and the judiciary. They have fired more than 300,000 black women, and it is government that black folks have largely been able to tap into for employment. And here you now have you have Russell Vought, who is the mastermind and lead author of Project 2025, who is now in charge of the Office of Management and Budget for this second term 2.0, and who has met and I have some recordings, and I will play a couple of them, who met with two reporters disguised as wealthy Republican donors and completely unleashed exactly what Project 2025 was to execute. So, then you have one of the Democrats that went and said to uh, sent a letter to the Treasury Department to try to see if they can't get them to lower interest rates, which would cause companies to do more hiring that would create opportunities. But even at that, because this administration has done away with diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, and it said to corporations, you don't have to use race in any way in terms of considering people for employment, and corporations are falling in line with that. So uh, this is what racism is. This is what racism looks like when you have people who control all of the levers to determine whether or not you can participate or not participate in this so-called agrarian society. That's what racism is. That's what racism looks like.
And you
And
know
this
what?
is
I agree. I agree with you, but I would add to that that not only is it about power, it's about who we are. Even if we had the power that they have over them, we would never behave like that. And as long as we
correct.
are who we are and we know who we are as a spiritual people, and we need to cling to that. We need to cling to that. I'm not saying go out here and let yourself get beat up. Now, I ain't saying that. I'm just saying it ain't by and large, it's not in us to go and oppress a whole people and and commit massacres and massive rapes and lynchings where you bring the whole family out to watch somebody be lynched and then cut off fingers and toes as souvenirs. That's not in our DNA. And it's important to me to realize that it's more than just, the fact that we don't have the opportunity or the power. Even if we had it, we would not exercise it because that's not who we are. And there is power in not being them. And that's what we need to understand. I don't know if I should say this, but there's a scripture that says if your enemy is hungry, give him food to eat. If he's thirsty, give him water to drink. And in so doing, you will be pouring hot coals on his head. Now, literal folk, I guess they think hot coals are really going to appear out of nowhere. But that is actually a very powerful metaphysical concept tool that you have to know how to use. But if you know how to use it, it is very, very powerful. Okay, and we are that spiritual people. So
No,
I hope.
I agree 1,000%. I believe that the power of good and decency and love always neutralizes hate. I believe that firmly through my faith commitment and certainly through spirituality. I've been having a conversation because I posted something online that I saw last week when I was out in a rural area at an
Mhm.
auction way out in a place called Sandwich, Illinois.
I've been there.
Um,
I've been
yeah,
there.
in a farmland. And so I go there
Yeah.
once a month to this auction. And myself and one of my other uh, colleagues, um, we are the only two black people who are out probably in the entire area there.
Hmm.
However, um, there was a man who had a shirt on that says "Be kind" on the
Hmm.
front. It says "Be kind," and then on the back of the shirt he says, "You." I want to pull it up because I posted it on my social media page because the message was extraordinarily powerful, and it's been getting a lot um, attention. So, and I thought, now this person has this on out here. Now, of course, there was also a person out there who had a MAGA hat on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was one person who actually had a MAGA hat on. I'm trying to see if I can pull this
Well,
up.
you
If I
can
can pull this up.
well,
Um, but
think about
but
mega caps while you're looking for that. Thing about mega
yeah,
caps is I've gotten to the point where with the black MAGA, I've gone beyond being angry. To me, they're just precise, but because they're just too far out there. Their love of massa is beyond and hatred of black folks is just beyond the pale. But so they don't count. At least that's what I do for my own peace of mind.
right,
Until I see
right.
somebody wearing a MAGA cap, then I want to strangle them. That's just I really do. I mean, nothing
Well,
sets me off more than seeing a Negro with a MAGA cap.
you know what I noticed now? We have been traveling out there over the last year, right? We go the first Sunday of every month. And of course, during the election, we saw several Trump Vance signs.
Mm,
Not a,
mm,
not a, not a single Kamala Harris
right,
sign.
right.
Not a single one. Now, this past week that we went out there, we saw no Trump fan signs, and there were
Mm,
some signs along the road that had a word defund, but a circle with the red slash through it, and underneath
mm,
it, it had the word defend, and underneath it, democracy.
mm.
In this rural area, which
Mm-hmm,
is all farmland, uh, and a bunch of farmland that had not been harvested.
mm-hmm.
We saw crops that had not yet been
You don't leave
harvested,
that out.
right? So, and then at this auction, that all of these people were there. 99% of them were white, and there was this one person who had a MAGA hat on.
hmm
One person who had a MAGA hat on.
But
I don't.
they're going to be like that, especially with the religion that they have. Now, I'm not talking. I'm
Yes.
not knocking. There's two different Jesuses. Okay, that's
Sure.
the point I'm making. The one that they gave us ain't the one that they keeping. The one they got was a
Correct.
crew cut. He's an American. He wears army boots, and if you're not a white man, he will hurt you. Okay, and he justifies all their mean and evilness because they are in their own minds the chosen people, and they must be above others as their status indicates, going back to the God told the Jews to kill every man, woman, child in the promised land. So that kind of mentality is pervasive in their culture. It's pervasive. And that's why King got hurt so bad thinking he could depend on him. I'm not knocking everybody. I'm just saying that branch, the white evangelicals are horrible. They really are.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
religion can be, when it's spiritual, it's an incredibly powerful force, and some of our greatest leaders have also been our religious leaders, but without
Well,
question. Henry Henry Henry
when it's
Methodist Turner, down through Malcolm and Martin.
when it's correctly interpreted and applied, when the
Mm-hmm.
principles are correctly interpreted and applied, um, but you have those who try to justify their hate by conflating them with spiritual and scriptural principles, which are a complete class. Um, but going back to what you said before, no, we don't
Okay.
have any desire to have power to subjugate people the way that
Right.
we have been subjugated.
Right.
We
It's not how we
that's
roll.
not it's not in our DNA. That's not what I am. what we really want is for people to be left alone so that we can prosper like everybody else prosper. And our children can have great educational institutions and opportunity just like their children.
And the
We're not
thing,
we're not trying to take over
no,
um, anything that they have or whatever belongs to them.
but see, that's where the history comes in, why it's so important, because the racism says, well, if these people are lazy, if they worked hard, they'd have their own prosperous communities. And the history says we did have them, and you demonic people ran through them and massacred everybody from Tulsa to Greenwood to Roseboro to Lakeland.
Rosewood.
They got lakes that used to be black towns that they flooded to cover up what they did. And Central Park in America was Seneca Village before they ran us out of there. They found skeletons with proof that blacks had actually been worked to death. And that's why the history is so important so you understand the situation that you're in. So even if we build up something, if we do build it, we got to have a strategy for defending it.
Well, I think that's what part of our problem is that we have not had that holistic strategy, right? Of building
right.
up the infrastructure and then building up a way to secure the infrastructure.
Well, I mean, we don't have bombs. I mean, they actually bombed Tulsa. They dropped a bomb on these people. Bombs have been dropped twice in American history. Twice. Once in Tulsa, and the other time in Philadelphia on the Move people. And a good friend of mine was an editor at the Philadelphia Inquirer when that happened. So he had a lot of firsthand knowledge of what was going on with Move. But they actually bombed black neighborhoods, and they will do it again because there's been no growth. They haven't changed. That's why Trump is in office now. So when you
Yeah,
have that kind
he's strategically bombing the communities, but in a different way, right?
anything they
They're
did in the
taking
past, they're willing to do it.
yeah, well, they're doing it. I say that they're doing it in a different way and using a scalpel to do it, to carve out, to disenfranchise the people of our community. And you have people who are completely oblivious to that reality.
They want to stay that way. They want to stay that way. I mean, I'm always proselytizing, preaching, teaching in terms of, what we need to be about and understanding, what's going on. But, I have to be kind of careful nowadays because I cannot mentally deal with Black MAGA arguing with me. I can't argue with these people. My head won't take it, and they are convinced. There's no difference between the Black MAGA and the white MAGA except for the fact that Black MAGA is black hating black, while one is white hating black. But other than that, there ain't no difference.
Well, I had back in 2000 in Louisville, Kentucky, I was at uh, a Christian conference, National Baptist Congress, and I met one of my favorite now, who has passed on. He was my lecturer, and there was an ecumenical discussion. And uh, at lunch, there was a conversation between him, his name was Matt King Carter, and a Jewish rabbi, and the three of us. And the rabbi said, and we were talking about the differences between Jewish oppression and African American oppression. And he said something. There were three things that he said that he noted. he noted three major differences. And one was the fact that he said that Jews did not have the luxury of individualism. He said that they had to make sure that Cohen and Leibowitz both made it because their numbers were so small that they don't have the luxury of individualism. And if the entire community of Jews were to make it, they have to make sure that each other made it. The other thing that he said was that Jews did not model their oppressors' behavior. In other words, we are modeling our oppressors' behavior on each other,
I wish I'd
on
been there.
ourselves.
I wish I'd been there. I'd have put an intellectual hurting on that man. By the time I got finished with him, he wouldn't even be walking. Number one, our whole worldview is based on the group as opposed to the individual. Going back to the our African roots, where we practice communalism, when nobody owned the land. The land belonged to everyone. Okay, this European came, he set out a basket of fruit to give to these African children, and he said, "You all have a race, and when you get to the end of it, whoever wins gets the basket." So the little African kids held hands and walked down the raceway together, because if one didn't eat, the others did not eat. Our worldview is grounded in the group. That's why historically we've had more of an emphasis on the Old Testament, because it was group based. So he had that totally wrong. And if you know anything about the culture, you know that that's wrong. And as far as modeling our behavior over there, they still got their names. They didn't have their names taken. They didn't have centuries of white is right and black is wrong like they had on them. And so that what he said was racist and stupid, and I would have warned him out. He wouldn't have said that in front of me.
Well, I think that I think in context, I think what we look at it more broader than that is that where I look at we coming out of slavery, right? Coming out of slavery, we had to be interdependent upon each other. That was a given. We were interdependent upon each other, and we were interdependent upon each other all the way up to, I can remember, up to the 70s, until this philosophy came into place that, I'm going to get mine, you get yours. As a kid, when I grew up, I remember that if we didn't have bread in the house, my mother could send me next door to Miss Ann's house or to Miss Ingram's house, or call Miss Ingram and say, "I'm going to send Mark over there. Can you give him 4 or 5 slices of bread?" And Miss Ingram would have them all ready for me. I would go over to the house. He would be making up the package and having a conversation with me at the same time. If we didn't have flour or sugar,
That's right.
and vice versa, we were interdependent upon each other. And
That's
so in that context is where I don't see that conversation being inaccurate, is because we started operating as though we were independent of each other
no, but
when we are actually interdependent.
the argument is still wrong. I'm sorry. Our history, our culture, our cultural heritage is one of it takes a village to raise a child. That's the group right there, group responsibility. And when I was coming up, I was from youngest of a big family, and every time I was getting ready to do something wrong, somebody knew who I was and was, "What you doing there, little Griggs?" And what have you. But see, what has happened is that they control Hollywood. They control all kinds of media. So, and they have their own names. So, and they have been able to maintain their community separate and apart to maintain their culture. What has happened to us with the pressure to integrate, we have also assimilated. And that's been an aspect of assimilation as opposed to there's a big difference in saying that you've assimilated as opposed
But
to saying,
isn't that a part of modeling? Isn't that a part of modeling, trying to assimilate to a
yes,
way?
yeah, but see, the implicit thing is that there's something wrong with y'all because we have forces that pushed us into that, and we weren't clear about certain things. One of the things that I teach on all the time is the difference in assimilation, desegregation, and integration. And we failed to understand the difference in integration and desegregation. And the same people, it was because of that that led us into assimilation. Anytime you try to integrate a weak group into a strong group, they will assimilate. That's a sociological fact. So that's what happened with us in terms of things going bad. And I have been maintaining forever that that is exactly the period where we started to deteriorate as a people. And I feel like we've been deteriorating basically ever since. I don't think we're the same people. I don't think we're the same people we used to be. And it's because of that assimilation. But, most of us have no idea what the difference is between desegregation and integration and assimilation. But the forces acting upon us, we're only human. The forces acting upon us pushed us in that direction. When we tried not to assimilate, they bombed us and burned out our communities. So he does not have the same for him to compare where we are without comparing our experiences. Yeah, y'all had some oppression. You had a Holocaust that lasted, 30 years, 20 years? We have 4 centuries. Okay? And no Jewish person has any right to lecture me on who we are as opposed to them, especially with what they got going on. Ooh, I'd have wore him out. He would have wished he'd never said it in front of me. But that's just how I am.
I understand. I understand. Um, yeah. But yeah, with that, with that, um, we still, we are here, right? We are here. And in this space that we are here in this region, as Black people in Chicago and the Cook County area, in this Midwestern region, um, we have available to us that this consciousness um, of operating in these fractionized areas, which advantages for the white supremacists, right? To continue to disadvantage us. People like, and I'm calling names out, of people like Ed Burke, Ed Verdoliak, people like Michael Madigan, uh, and
Mhm.
the Hines and the Dailies, that they kept us fractionized so that they could exact their will, manipulating our people. So, as you talked about earlier, racism exists in Democrats. It exists in Republicans. Um, the question becomes is how, when we have the availability to organize ourselves in a place of power, to deconstruct deconstruct that type of system imposed on us. We have it available to us right in this region, unlike many other areas around this country that is not available to Black folks to organize, right? Um, Here in the state of Illinois, we're about 13, 14% of the entire population of the state of Illinois, right?
Mhm.
In the state of Florida, we're about the same. The difference is that most of us are in the major region that basically determines what goes on in Illinois. And so I'm saying that we need to organize ourselves in a way so that we have the force to have the determination that sets the model for the rest of the Black diaspora.
Yeah, but we're saying the same thing, just different ways in terms of the fact that we need You're not going. That presupposes a level of consciousness that's missing in many instances, and that goes back to the thing of wanting to be comfortable. You want to go work, you come home, you have a hot meal, you drink a beer, you watch 3 hours of TV, you go to bed. I don't want to hear nothing else. Okay, I mean, and I've encountered that too many times. So, that's one of the things. And the other thing is, and that's why the history is so important. And what made us, and I'm caught up on this, so you might think I got a one-track mind and I need brain surgery, but we need to reconnect our connection with our ancestors. That's where our power comes from. That's what makes us different. We pulling on them ancestors and they pulling us up. That's how we survive what nobody else could survive. We got brought over here because the Indians were dropping dead at the cruelty of these people. Not to mention all of us who didn't even make it. You had selective selection because the trip over here was so bad. You had millions of Africans who died before they could get here during the Middle Passage. So we have been, in so many ways, overcoming what we wasn't supposed to. That's part of why they're scared of us. Ain't nobody supposed to be able to do what we've done. Look at how much stuff we have invented, how many things we have created. What would
Everything.
Without us?
Everything.
Thank you. Okay.
Everything.
There was a meme on Trump. I guess it's real. I'm not sure. But he was going on and on about how America created everything and invented everything, and everything he mentioned was invented by a black person.
Well, then if America created, then it was Black America that created.
That's right. That's the point. Everyone he said was done by a black person from open heart. Open heart surgery, traffic light, doorknob. I mean, you name it. We created it. The culture. What would they be doing without us? Everybody, the whole planet copies us. I can show you a tape of a Japanese choir, and you close your eyes and you would not know that they're not coming out of a Black Baptist church. I promise you, you would not be able to know it. Okay, so we're the cultural imperialists of the world, and I guess as the pressure from our enemies keeps building in, I keep grabbing onto that because I need something to maintain me, to sustain me. And it's the understanding of who we are, of how great we are. And I didn't I've always felt that way, but you didn't hear me talking about it the way I am now because we weren't under the pressure that we are now. So, we have to not only just, our strategies have to be on so many levels, just in terms of how are we going to survive this onslaught against us. We already messed up. And now you're going to take away the little bit of history that we do know. And we need that history because in theology and religion, there's a thing, it's unspoken, but it's called the natural order of things, which means that white folks, everything's the way it is supposed to be. And white folks are in charge because they're supposed to be. And if you don't know that history, you think it just happened. You don't know about the massacres, the enslavement, and the brainwashing and all that. So how do we fight that? How do we fight that? Considering, I always say, black folks are totally messed up, but compared to we've been through, we ain't nothing but a miracle. That's how I feel about it. We ain't nothing but a miracle.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more that we certainly are a miracle, a
And we messed
miracle
up.
unto we're a miracle unto ourselves, and we are a miracle unto the world, in that sense. But I don't disagree with you that we need to reconnect, and certainly we have to connect to our history, but we have to we have to we have to be ambidextrous. That we have to reconnect, but we have to strategize in order for us to thrive. And we have more available to us now to be able to actualize that our foreparents have worked and sacrificed for us to be in the position that we are now, so that we can advance ourselves a bit more. So what is the strategy, or what is your idea of how we connect those two, so that we have remembrance of, one, how we got here and what keeps us strong, and two, forging ourselves ahead, because we can't wait till we got it, that we got the reconnection, um,
Well, the
without.
remembering is just fuel for what we have to do. It's there's no conflict there. It's
Right.
just fuel. It's fuel for where we are going ahead. And I can only speak for what I do. It's like one of my buddies. We talk about how how insane this is, and we're both losing our minds. So I've just decided, I'm going to start sending jokes along with our conversation. I'm trying to lighten stuff up so I can survive mentally and psychologically this onslaught of incredible stupidity and meanness, because it offends my sensibilities and my soul and my spirit as a spiritual person. So I have to do stuff just to try to keep me sane. And I think we all have to find ways of feeding each other and recognizing what our issues are. One thing is the division now, part of it is the fact that with integration or assimilation came the fact that the real segregation for us now is class, sociological. Middle class black folks are scared. We don't necessarily still all have the same culture anymore. I mean, there's always been subdivisions within the culture, but in a broad sense, we had the same culture. And now we're at total odds. I see people looking at me where I speak to people, and they're like, "Do you know them?" Yeah, no, I ain't got no. They're black folks. But it's also we have my antenna up. If they ain't right, I'm not gonna say that to them because that's just common sense. But how do we deal with that? Just a lot of these things that we throw out there that really require a whole lot of concentrated effort by a whole lot of very smart people. There's a whole lot more. I can throw it out there, but there's a whole lot of it I can't solve. I can't. I can throw a little light on it, but I can't solve it.
Well, I'm just trying to. I'm just trying to have the conversation, and I'm not trying to um, oversimplify.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm not trying to oversimplify it, but I am trying to say that some basic fundamentals of reconnecting us, just like you just said,
Mm-hmm.
that when you're out in public, you don't have to know a person's name to
Mm-hmm.
identify with them. If I'm out in public and you're out in public, we're Black people. So we have
Mm-hmm.
an identity. We have a shared identity. And we also have a shared lived experience, though they may vary slightly. But they're more similar than they are different. And we certainly can identify with each other's plight without even saying the first word to each other.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, why is it that it feels strange that someone who we have not met before um, says something to us who
Mm-hmm.
looks like us, right? That should be that's an indication of the saying of I feel you, basically,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. I
I
mean,
feel your experience.
we had a million and one thing that we do and say, that are just ours. And yet sometimes I remember being around some white folks and I said, "Oh, it was something really ignorant." I said, "Man, that is deep." And they were like, "No, it's not. It's stupid." you know, you
Right.
know. But deep can mean stupid fun. Like that's some heavy. You say something's heavy, it's like, man, that's heavy. Like somebody really screwed up. That's heavy. You understand that? Or when I say
Mhm.
bad, oh man, she bad. You know that mean good.
Right.
So we have a lot of language things, and we have some. I don't know how to break that barrier among a lot of us, especially along class lines. People who do not know who they are. That's why I'm making a big deal about curiosity. I think not just in terms of connecting as a people, but as a quality of life. I think when people are beaten down and defeated, one of the first things to go is their curiosity. And so you go into a home and there's no written material. They never watch the news. They never read the news. They have no idea what's going on. So for all intents and purposes, in any kind of struggle we have, they're not going to be any help. They're not going to be any help. They're going to be about as useless as the MAGA folk. And so, you know, how do we identify the kinds of factors that go into it? They may not be that obvious. They might be kind of subtle, like the lack of curiosity. But how do we identify some of those things? And we know for some people, who go against us, the handkerchief heads, we know some of them is just for money. We got Stephen A. Smith. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's a very famous, big time
Yeah.
sports. Well, are you familiar with his controversy?
Yeah. I'm familiar with his ignorance and trying to somehow um, make the transition that because he is a
Hmm.
well-noted journalist in sports, that somehow he can make the leap over into
Right.
understanding the socio-political um, um,
Yeah, he just
condition,
jumped on.
which clearly,
He just jumped.
he
Yeah,
is ignorant. He is
very.
completely misinformed, uninformed, and just because you have a platform does not make one um, intelligent to
Hmm.
be able to speak about this. You really show your ignorance when you're trying to use a platform that suggests that somehow you you can leap from talking about basketball and football and another what I call uh, glorifying the enslavement of people. Um, that you somehow now have something that you're going to lecture the rest of us on.
No,
Uh,
especially when you're an idiot. I mean, the bottom line is that he's stupid. So the latest thing he did was criticizing Crockett, Jasmine Crockett, because he said she is not working with Trump enough and trying hard enough to find compromise to get things done. So I mean, he's too stupid to know how stupid he is and the impact.
exactly. I mean, how you can't compromise with somebody who is not interested in
He's
compromise.
your enemy, right? You can't compromise with your enemy.
You can't compromise
India,
with somebody who has already said to you that he is somebody else's retribution, which means he is our enemy. Your
exactly.
enemy has no willingness or interest in compromising with you.
Mm,
So
yeah.
I have, um, um, the Stephen A. Smith and the Steve Harveys
Yes.
of the 2016. All of a sudden, he has had his come to Jesus moment.
Oh, Harvey,
Um,
yes.
and well, he's tried to.
Yeah, he
And
ain't right.
then
He ain't never been right.
or the hurt right, or the Herschel Walkers and these folks because they have been in somewhat of the limelight. Somehow, somebody has used them to try to lecture to the rest of us, and certainly to those who have been on this battlefield far longer than many of us have been, to all of a sudden, you are now this person who is all, uh, you know, profound um, to uh, to lecture the rest of us as to how we are to engage this socio-political construct.
Well, yeah, the thing is that they represent the whole Black MAGA, which is, I think, they're organizing now. I mean, there's this Black women group, Flip Chicago Red, that are,
Yeah,
I
there's
think,
about three of them. There's about
who?
three of them.
Oh,
There's about three of them.
there's three of them.
Yeah.
Okay, and I
Yeah,
mean,
I don't even, that's Blaga, and I don't pay him any attention. There's about three of them.
I wonder though the fact that they are becoming so blatant. Not to mention they're already stupid. It, it feels like that part is growing. I know I've run into a bunch of Black MAGA, in just different endeavors. I've run into. That's why I'm so, I guess, gun shy now.
Well,
Without
a
knowing who they
lot
are.
of it, yeah, a lot of it, are people who are frustrated. A lot of it are people who are frustrated, and those of us who have some sense of understanding of where we are and how we've got here, and have some sense of understanding of the socio-political construct. I believe we have. Now, there are some people that are just, as you say, that are lost, and they're not lost, they're just compromised, and have willingly compromised. There's nothing we can do about them. But that is a minority. That is a minority. What I believe
Well,
that
I
we
guess
have to focus on
okay.
is the conscious majority. That's where we have to place our
No, I
energy
think you're
and our
right. You're
focus.
absolutely right. But I've had a kind of wild idea, and I don't know if it's a good one or not. It is maybe even a little silly. I was thinking we could get up a whole bunch of signs with Denmark Vesey written on them. Okay, and that would be like educational because people would ask who was Denmark Vesey, you know, and you'd explain, and then by the same token, you would have, the people who would have turned him in,
Yeah.
it get kind of pointed out. I was just thinking it might add another dynamic. I don't know if that would be too subtle or maybe not even potent enough, but it's just something that came across my mind to carry Denmark Vesey signs or Gabriel Prosser signs.
Well, sometimes when you use upside down images, right, to
Hmm.
get people's attention, because
Right.
once you have their attention, then you can give them some information. But if you don't
Yeah.
have their attention, you can't give them any information. So it may be a very good idea, because when you put something strange in front of a person and they see a lot of it, they're going to start asking, what is that? Which
Hmm.
means that you now have their attention to give them some information that they need.
And it's
So,
it's important for them to know that we always fought back. We always fought
yes,
back, and that in both cases, what happened? Whether it's Gabriel Prosser or Denmark Vesey, there was one rule. They planned, for anyone who may not know, they planned massive slave uprisings. And Denmark Prosser was a slave. Denmark Vesey was a free man in South Carolina. And they planned huge uprisings with one rule: do not tell any house Negroes. Somebody broke the rule, told a house Negro, and a true house Negro form. He ran up to Massa, dropped a dime, and they both wound up getting hanged behind it. So
well, what you're talking about is meritorious manumissioners. Have you ever heard of it? Meritorious
I know what the
manumission.
words mean.
Well, what it is it was actually a law that was put in place in 1710 in Virginia, that if
I
you
have
were
heard of it.
enslaved, and you tricked on another enslaved person who was planning a rebellion, or to protect the masses' property, you earned your freedom by
Right.
turning them in. That's called a meritorious manumissioner. Now, I
Hmm.
did something during the last mayoral campaign, when you had all of these, what I call meritorious manumissioners, these black
Mm,
figureheads,
mhm,
that supported Paul Vallis, who
mm,
was supported by the MAGA billionaires
mhm,
in an attempt to flip Chicago red. That's what that
mhm,
was all about. So I
mhm.
put out a piece showing all of the, what I call at the time, the meritorious manumissioners, along with the billionaires that were supporting Paul Vallis. While I was saying to us, Paul Vallis is not an alternative for us.
Right.
You may not know Brandon Johnson at the time. You may not.
Mhm,
I knew Brandon Johnson. I won't say I know him well, but I knew Brandon Johnson.
mhm,
And I said, Paul Vallis is not the alternative. Paul Vallis is being used and propped up by
mhm,
rich billionaires
mhm,
who were Trump's people in the
mhm.
last mayoral election. It didn't work. It didn't work as well as it shouldn't have worked. But there were a number of what I call black meritorious manumissioners, and I put them
Mhm.
all on a piece, and I put it out, and it kind of went a little viral. And some people were insulted about it, and I meant to insult them about it, but I was really
Yes,
turning
absolutely.
turning the picture on them to demonstrate to them who they were and what they were doing, and to try to show to the majority of us that look, I can be, listen, I can support you and I can be critical of you at the same time. But it
Mhm.
doesn't mean that I don't support you.
Exactly. Exactly.
I
Exactly.
support, I want you to be successful. I want you to be successful for our people. But if you are going down a pathway that I see that is a detrimental pathway, I can be critical of you, but I can support you at the same time.
That
And
requires
we,
nuance, though. See, that requires nuance, and that's why it's so important for us to have bigger muscles up here because nuance requires a higher level of thinking. It's so much easier just to say, "Hey, I'm with you" or "I'm against you." If I'm with you, I ain't got to worry. I'm gonna back you to the hilt, and if I'm against you, then you can't do nothing right. I mean, so given what's going on, yeah, we the Democratic Party has been poor, but like you said, you fight to make it better. You don't go up and vote for your enemy, the party of white folk. You fight to make it better. You don't just say, well, I had an idiot tell me I couldn't support Kamala because I can't support the lesser of two evils, which is that's so stupid. That's why I said my mind gets blown because even if she were the lesser of two evils, which she is not, it would still make more sense to support the lesser than the greater. So
right, right. Well, but in that, people are repeating talking points without having any
mhm,
substance whatsoever. It's something that they've heard somebody say over and over again, and when they don't have anything to say, that is what their go-to is. Well,
exactly,
why do
exactly.
I have to take the lesser of two evils? Okay, well, you know, we can
What's the
self-analyze ourselves of that because there's some things about us that aren't so good.
mm-hmm,
But do we want to throw us totally away? But I think that that's where um, the shallowness comes in. But I think that those of us who have worked hard to um, to be more informed, not that we know everything, but to be more informed
right,
and to have some understanding of how to navigate through these periods of time. We have that challenge to call those people to the carpet. Now, I believe in calling people out who are destructive and who are going in the wrong direction. And in many instances, they're doing that for their own self um, self-appeasement. And I think that we have a responsibility of calling that out. There are going to be some people who look like us that are not with us.
Got to be consequences. You
There,
can't
there
come
has to
back.
be, yeah, yeah, there has to be consequences of that. However, if we establish the strategy, if we establish the pool or the organized structure, even some of those people who have defected uh, will come home, and we'll welcome them home because
I ain't too sure
they
about
have to.
that. I ain't too sure
Well,
about that.
I think as long as they
I
come
ain't gonna
correct,
trust. I ain't gonna try. I ain't
well,
gonna trust
you
them.
know, well, I,
I don't like
I
people thinking.
understand. I understand, but see, once somebody has showed you who they are, we know who they are,
Right. That's
right?
why they can
We
come back.
know, yeah, we know,
You know.
we know who they are. Um, but I think that there was one thing that Ronald Reagan has said that I agree with: trust, but verify.
Yeah.
And so, but I get
That's
it. But
about it.
I think, but I think that
Law.
some of these people. That we have in positions are doing things because we have not held them to account.
Absolutely.
So we've abdicated, in some regards, our responsibility to hold them to account, and we've also let them go so that somebody else can manipulate them. All right, somebody manipulates their campaign, writing them a few checks, then they're going to work in that direction. So we have some responsibility to do
Hold
some
those feet to the fire.
self-correcting.
You gotta hold you, and that's what we're doing now in terms of just pointing out. This brother. He can't come to the cookout no more. He can't come. He ain't invited. Stephen A. He ain't
Mhm.
invited.
Yeah.
What's the fat boy's name? He ain't invited. Candace Owens, she ain't invited. Any black MAGA, they ain't invited. And it's just like those we were saying about the farmers. Their remorse is not because they've had a come to Jesus moment. It's just because they personally got hurt. Yeah, but they're okay with all the meanness. They're okay with separating babies from their families at the border, which really kills me about black MAGA. With the history that we have, you can support somebody who would take your babies away from you.
Hmm.
What kind of person are
Right.
you?
Right.
I mean,
But
it's that level of confusion.
don't you attribute that to what you said earlier, is that we need to reconnect with our history? Wouldn't that be someone who
Absolutely.
is completely ignorant of their history?
Hmm. Hmm. Well, it's the history, and the history is a means of getting there because you have to know it, but then you have to understand that you are part of it. See, a lot of our people, especially the young ones, they think of history as a pond of stuff that happens before they got here. Okay, that's their concept of history. When in reality, history is a stream that they live in. So they are involved in history, but they don't know. They just think it's stuff that happened in the past. So you have to,
Mhm.
you have to take you have to take that basic understanding and make it meaningful, so that it does have meaning. It has to be living and breathing. It's part of reconnecting with the ancestors. It's part of it's part of a holistic thing. It's part of having empathy, the spirituality that's made us the people that we are, so that you don't want to see anybody hurting. You don't want to see anybody going hungry. Like you talked about in the community that you grew up in, that we all grew up in at a certain time, where we looked out for each other, where it was safe to walk the streets. And now we're scared of each other. I mean, whenever I leave people, they always say the same thing now: be safe. Okay, be safe. Take care, whatever. But now everybody is concerned because of this deterioration of the separation, the fact that people are coming up in families where there is no community support, and they have been bombarded with so many things that they don't know how to cope with. They can't read. The educational system hasn't done a thing for them. They're totally ignorant. So how are these people going to amass any kind of thing with everybody else? This boy Nelly, the rapper, and I don't know anything about rap music, but Nelly, he performed for Trump, and he got criticized, and his response was, "Well, I got paid. I got paid." His justification was that he got paid, and I'm like, moron, don't you know that selling out means that you got paid? That's what selling out means. Anybody said you gave out, we said you sold out. That means you got paid. But he didn't have enough on the ball to even understand that. So we
Right.
we need a higher floor for everybody. We need a higher floor for everybody. And then those of us who operate on another level, we have to do some stuff so other people don't have to, because not everybody's going. You can't expect everybody to sit up and study this stuff, like some of us do. You can't expect that. That's wrong. But you have to have a floor so that you can have a decent conversation and they can understand what's going on.
Well, I think they also have to have a conscience that can't be cashed in.
Oh,
Uh,
absolutely.
and I think
But some,
that
yeah. Well, we're
I think
talking about
that's
greed, and we're also talking about just being unaware of anything. I've been in homes. I worked in child welfare. I've been in homes where there's no written material at all, not a single scrap of paper, not a newspaper, not a magazine, nothing ever, and nobody ever reads anything ever.
mhm.
Where the level of functioning is barely human, to be perfectly honest. And so what's happening with the educational system? We got English teachers who don't know how to conjugate. Okay, you know, I mean, the system's always been bad. It's always been bad. I worked in textbook publishing, as I said in the bio. Kids, creativity was basically getting educated out of them by the time they were in fourth, fifth grade. First, second, and third grade, they were creative as heck. These are Caucasian children from all over the country. By the time fifth grade, sixth grade got there, they were still writing about the cat. But when they were writing about the cat in second grade, they were saying funny stuff, you know. And everybody was inside. In the way we were taught, all the teachers were inside the box. I had one teacher who broke the mold, and to whom I am forever grateful. And he got fired for being who he was because he wore an afro 2 years before afros came out, and he was talking about Afrocentrism and this kind of hair is just as good as straight hair. Nobody talking like that. I mean, he was a famous jazz musician, actually. Well, not famous, but well known. He's known for his albums. Got written up recently. So breaking through that mold, it's Herculean. It ain't no easy thing to do. We just have to keep chipping away and chipping away and chipping away and saving where we can. And neither one of us is going to change the world, but one soul at a time. What else you gonna do?
Well, that's where I started 10 by 10 to win is because I believe that not one individual is going to do it, um, but if we could reach the ones in our trusted circle, right? That those who trust our voice, and they can reach the ones who trust their voice. If we
A
could
ripple
build
effect.
up a strong enough foundation, I believe that we could bring home, I believe that we can bring home a swath of change and transformation in our community because I believe that the time is ripe. Uh, the foundation has been laid for us to be able to to make those kinds of advancements, and in doing so, we can change the whole educational ethos for all of us, for that matter,
hmm hmm
for all of
And
us.
to give you an example of the power of it, many years ago, I was talking to a young man. I was a young man myself, and he was just really silly kind of guy. And somehow I got in a deep conversation with him. And I started talking about our history, who we were, what have you. And he went back and started talking to his grandmother and found out that they had escaped through slavery, through the Underground Railroad, up to Canada and back down. His whole demeanor changed. The guys he used to run with cut him loose. He cut them loose because he became serious and they weren't. His grandmother asked him, he asked his grandmother, why you never told me this about our history? And she said, why didn't you ever ask me? And so you can, I mean, that's something I'm very proud of, the fact that I had that kind of impact on this young man's life. And it's happened on more than one occasion. So we can reach out and we can, make a difference. And I don't know the effect that had on him. I don't know how that's rippled out in terms of people he's interacted with and what have you. But we do what we can. We do what we can, and we stand up and we commend each other. I teach, I lecture on this whole concept of connection and disconnection. It's basis for my book. And connected people bathe, glow in other people's glow. They, you do well, so that makes me feel good because I associate with your success. And when you feel bad, when you do badly, that hurts me as well because I don't want anything bad to happen to you because I see me in you and you see you in me. That's the essence of connection, and that's the essence of spirituality. And that's why I'm so down on the white evangelicals, because theirs is the exact opposite. They seek to separate from and be superior to. And so they're out to hurt you because they want to dominate you, and they have that Jesus that backs them up. But that is the essence of who we are. Reconnecting with that, the spirit where people in the neighborhood would do for each other. And I don't know how far I used to travel as a 7-year-old, miles by myself. Well, I mean, miles, Of course, I was in a smaller town, Pittsburgh, but still, I don't know if anybody would let a kid that age travel the way I did, walking miles on foot, not just
Yeah.
straight up and down those mountains, where after a
Yeah.
minute or two, you disappear from view. So,
Yeah. Oh, well, listen, we're coming to the close of the program. Listen, I want to thank you. I know that, I held you over longer um, than
it's quite
the
all right.
1 hour, but I certainly appreciate you, coming on again. And, we're just going to have to continue this dialogue, every couple of weeks. We're going to have to continue having this conversation so that we could come up with some solutions.
Sounds like a
Because
plan.
I am fundamentally hopeful, and I believe that the time, uh, is now, and we are in the right place, in the right region, that we can amass a swath of us together that will be a drawing card, for all of those others that are apathetic and be a model for the rest of the country on what it means to be real, engaged, proud Black people making a difference.
Yeah, I'm
Uh,
benighted to have a lot of time left. I really see them self-combusting, and I think it's a metaphysical thing. They they
yeah,
they're self-destructing, and where are we gonna be? We don't
yeah,
want to join them in that. So
right, right. All right. Well, listen, that's going to do it for this week, folks. I want to thank, Brother William Griggs for being here with us and sharing us with all of, his insight, and certainly the profound wisdom. I want to thank all of you who joined us by way of Facebook, YouTube, and on Instagram. And certainly thank you for listening to intellectualradio.com and iHeartRadio. We'll be right back here at the same time, the same place next week on intellectualradio.com. Good night.
good night.